clean energy package. Joining me now from Capitol Hill, representing Arizona's 8th Congressional District, Congresswoman Debbie Lesko. Congresswoman, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So, Congresswoman, we see a lot of Democratic lawmakers, even at the state level, piling up on President Trump over his views on the wildfires versus climate change. They're saying that he's not making the connection, which is interesting because we saw Governor Gavin Newsom come out and talk about the fires and immediately blame it on climate change when we really didn't know the origins of all of the fires. And for example, some of the fires have been caused by actual arsonists. So you have to wonder what that has to do with actual climate change.
Well, you know, the Democrats will do anything and say anything to try to undermine President Trump. Yet he's the one that went to California to meet with the Democrat governor. Where was Joe Biden? I think he was somewhere in an empty field in Delaware or something. You know, I mean, give me a break. President Trump he went to California. He's made sure that FEMA is coordinating for the disaster recovery. He's given them all kinds of money. He's there in person. And, you know, fires have been going on forever, right? But it's documented that California laws really are causing a problem. There's too much red tape in order to clear the forests. And communities in California have complained about this, that it's taking them years to cut through California laws, red tapes, in order just to clear out the forest so that these fires don't take place. And so, you know, President Trump is just saying, okay, let's use common sense. Let's clear out the timber that's laying all around, causing fuel for the fires. It's called ladder fuel. And it's total common sense. Anybody thinking about it would know that you have to clear the forest. And that's what President Trump is saying, in addition to meeting with the Democrat governor and giving federal help.
Yeah, obviously this is more about poor forest management. We've known about this for years. The Democrats control California, and they know very well what they need to do. Now, Joe Biden's VP pick, she made it down to California. She met with Newsom, and she made some sort of connection to racism and climate change. I'll let her explain it. We have video of it. Roll tape.
This is a public health crisis, the climate crisis. Let's talk about it on the issue of systemic racism. In America today, of all of the poor air quality zones of America, 70% of the people who live in those areas are people of color. So when we talk about environmental justice, we know that people of color, poor people, are disproportionately impacted by these issues.
It's a little bit of a stretch. Your reaction?
I think it's a lot of a stretch. I mean, she has been ranked, Kamala Harris has been ranked as the most liberal U.S. senator, over and above Bernie Sanders. So that tells you a little bit, I think. But, you know, I mean, come on. Connecting racism to forest fires, they've just gone over the top crazy.
Yeah, I mean, the audacity and the gall for her to go down there when people's homes have been burned and dozens of people have been killed in these fires, and she's just jumping to racism. That's not helpful in this conversation. And a lot of these Democrats, again, they're talking about climate change and science. They love science. They love talking about that. Usually when they talk about science, it really has nothing to do with science. We have a tweet from Senator Amy Klobuchar. She's talking about the Scientific Americans' first endorsement ever, which is some, green group. They understand the weight of this election and know how desperately America needs a president who believes in science and will act. So have you noticed that, the whole science thing? Every single day we're getting lectured about science from Democrats when the science that they're talking about doesn't even doesn't even make sense. It's not common sense.
Well, I believe in science. President Trump believes in science. Republicans believe in science. But you know what? We don't believe that forest fires are caused by systemic racism. That's just nuts.
Yeah, I agree with you. What is Congress going to do? I know that there were efforts from both sides of the aisle on renewing calls for additional wildfire prevention and response. Is there talk about this? What's going on?
Yeah, I think there is things that Republicans and Democrats can agree on. I mean, I'm from Arizona. We have forest fires as well, not as bad as California. I mean, don't California my Arizona, okay? Because we do pretty good forest management. But we've had a drought, a long drought. We've gone through a spell of drought in the western United States. And when you combine that with, lightning strikes, it causes forest fires. And when you combine that with California, especially not allowing the timber industry. I mean, they've basically annihilated the timber industry in California. They don't allow anybody to go in and clean up the forest, so there's not all these dead trees and branches that cause the fueling of the fire. I mean, that's just crazy. Why can't we come together and stop this back and forth about who's to blame, and then Kamala Harris saying it's about systemic racism? I mean, seriously, that's nuts.
Yeah.
Let's get together. And we did work on a drought contingency plan in Arizona and the western states, and both Republicans and Democrats got together because that's part of the problem. I mean, there's been droughts throughout history. And so we're through another drought in the western United States, including Arizona and California, and we need to deal with it, and we are.
Yeah, and there's a reason why we call it climate change now versus global warming is what it used to be, because then we saw the weather and the temperatures fluctuate. So it didn't fit their narrative, of course.
There used to be climate cooling. Remember, they used to say it was climate cooling. Then it was climate warming, global warming, and now it's climate change because, of course, they can't lose on that one. The climate does change.
Yeah, and if it doesn't fit the narrative, they just change the words and mold it into something that works for them. Now, the coronavirus aid debate rages on. Where are we with that? Apparently, President Trump is encouraging both parties to go bigger, which would include a $1,200 stimulus check for most Americans. Is that something that you support?
Well, yes, I would support that. What I really support is basically giving more PPP loans to small businesses so that they can keep their workers. There's some small businesses that are doing really well right now. They're thriving, but other ones are really hurting, especially in the tourism industry, which is huge in Arizona. And so I think there's a need for more help to help small businesses and their workers get through this struggling time. So I am very supportive of that. I'm also supportive of continuing the $300 a week federal unemployment assistance. And when you combine that with the states, it really helps people get through. What I'm not in support of is what Nancy Pelosi wanted, which is continuing this really high unemployment per week so that people get paid more to sit at home than to go back to work. I also think I know Republicans, including myself, really want to make sure that we have liability protections for businesses, schools, so that we don't have a bunch of frivolous lawsuits going on, which will hamper businesses and schools reopening. So I think there's things we can agree on. Unfortunately, Pelosi and Schumer are holding this hostage over the sake of our nation. They think it's more important to bash President Trump and not have him have a so-called win than to help American people. And that's disgusting.
Yeah, absolutely. Did you see the reports of the Chinese virologist who is accusing the Chinese government of manufacturing the coronavirus intentionally? I wasn't able to independently verify that, but there is interviews of it. Tucker Carlson from Fox News believes she's credible. He wasn't able to verify her claims either, but it certainly is interesting.
Well, yeah, I mean, this happened near the Wuhan labs. There's no doubt that there's Wuhan, China laboratories that are biomedical labs. And it wouldn't put it past me. I mean, come on, China's trying to basically take over the world. They infiltrate Chinese students into our universities to try to steal our research and development. They give all kinds of infrastructure loans to other countries so that they can basically take over those countries. It wouldn't surprise me at all, and it's really unfortunate that this woman is being shut down once again by the tech industry, like they know what's the truth. How does tech executives or lower level tech people know what's true and what's not true? Let the American people decide what's true.
Yeah, well, they were citing PolitiFact, which used couple random articles that really had nothing to do with it. And as you know, a lot of the experts have gotten a lot of things wrong on the coronavirus. And so things are constantly changing. And look, I don't know if her claims are accurate or not, but the fact that we can't even have a conversation about it, and the fact that these tech giants are just censoring her and shutting her down when there's tons of other misinformation online, it's a little revealing and it's kind of scary. So hopefully we'll get more answers from her. I asked Congressman Andy Biggs yesterday if Congress or lawmakers would consider having her come testify. Is that something that you would like to see?
Oh, I would love to see it, but Pelosi's not going to let it happen over in the Democrat-controlled House. Maybe they can do it over in the Republican-led Senate, where we could actually find out opposing stories. And then if she's disproven, so be it. But to censor people just because they have a different opinion, and from my understanding, she has a good bio. I mean, she's not some crazy lunatic or something. She's a virologist and a well-respected virologist. So she's actually putting her life at risk going against the Communist Chinese Party by coming out on this. And look at what happened to the last scientist in China that was a whistleblower about the coronavirus escaping, basically, and all of a sudden he dies of coronavirus. I mean, I don't trust the Chinese Communist Party to tell us the truth.
Yeah, I don't trust them either. Well, we're going to have to leave it here, Congresswoman. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Coming up next, curbing coronavirus and the race to refine a vaccine. The CDC offering an update on the timeline.